All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. I know it's the end of this conference Thursday afternoon, but super excited for you all to be here. My name's Eason. I'm the product manager at Databricks for AI/BI dashboards. I'm joined by Rory, our engineering manager for the team. So between the two of us, all your dashboard feature requests somehow got funneled, through our backlogs. So really excited for you all to be here today. The plan is to share with you guys, a little bit more detail on what you saw on the main stage. So things you saw like key drivers, cross-filtering, right, that you saw in the keynote this morning. We'll get into a little more detail. We're going to talk about performance, and then we're definitely going to do a demo and answer some of your questions. Um, so legal had us put up a forward-looking statement, so I'm going to pause there for 2 seconds. And please know that there's going to be a survey throughout this entire conference. If you've gone to other sessions, I think they've probably shown you this already, but please do that. But yeah, let's get going. Point today is to talk about what's new and what's next in the IBI dashboards. Like I mentioned, the plan is a quick intro on dashboards in general, a look at what's new and what we've been doing in the past year, talking about optimizing dashboard performance, because as we get to a more mature position in dashboards, you're going to want to be sharing these to more and more users. So making sure cost doesn't scale like linearly with usage by actually finding more optimizations is going to be really important. I'm going to demo everything, look at the roadmap, and then, of course, take your questions. Okay, so brief refresher on AIBI. I think I'll choose how much time I spend on this depending on kind of how we're feeling in the room. So can I get a show of hands if you've used AIBI yourself? Oh, so a good number of us. Okay. And are you guys so how many of you guys are like prototyping and kind of considering AIBI at this stage? Okay, I see, a good amount. Okay, so I won't spend too much time on this then, but like you saw this morning, AIBI is a product line of two products, Dashboards and Genie. We're bringing them closer together. And the reason why we made this investment in the first place, and I think Ken alluded to this in the keynote, is obviously we have great BI partners at Databricks, like your Tableaus, your Lookers, and I'm sure a lot of your organizations use those tools too. But we heard demand for a new native BI solution because we heard from customers that they felt we were in a position to do three things really well. The first one was people wanted to leverage the governance you have in UC, the fact that you can do all of your compute management and cost management in one platform, and that really reduces the complexity of your tech stack. So people said, hey, like if my data is already in Databricks, can I just really easily visualize it and build a dashboard, share it out without having to go to another tool? And that's the first motivation for why we built the IBI. The second part was scaling data is just getting harder and harder. So data volume keeps going up, but if you get that to another tool, you have to choose like, am I going to direct query? Am I going to do an extract model? But in either of those cases, you're limited by some kind of performance or scale or cost, right? But with native Databricks, you don't have any of those limitations. Our compute model, there is no additional view and licensing fees, right? And you can just query as much data as you want, as you would in a notebook and in a SQL editor. And finally, with this wave of AI, I think we're all seeing, even of our own experience using chatbots, AI gets better with the more context it has. And a lot of that context lives in dashboards, it lives in notebooks, it lives in how you do data engineering, and it lives in kind of how you do RAG models, for example, right? So a lot of those other proprietary BI tools only have context on the data that you give it, but it doesn't have your entire data estate. So AIBI and Genie specifically is in a better position to leverage all that data. So that's why we invested in AIBI as well. Okay, so when we put all those pieces together, one success story we saw last year was that Wine Shipping is one of the many organizations that have fully adopted AIBI as their primary BI tool. So 75% of their entire staff now logs into Databricks on a regular basis and make data-driven decisions. And we're really excited about this trend. We know not all customers are kind of at this stage yet. A lot of you guys are probably in a transition state where you're going from, like a Power BI or a Tableau, and you're like, maybe I'll use some Databricks, some Power BI, maybe I'll use all Databricks in the future, and what does that migration look like? But when you get to the end game and you have all of your insights in AIBI, you really do see a lot of benefits. So we GA last year, and we've heard since GA that you guys asked for three things. And a lot of this was motivated by, hey, like I want to use you guys more. Like I'm bought in on the cost thing, I'm bought in on the unified governance, but you don't have drill through, or you don't have multi-page, or I can't send subscriptions in this way that I need, so it's a non-starter. So more coverage of conventional BI features is the first ask that we heard. Now the other one is people ask for a more efficient author and consumption experience. We have an opportunity here to build BI from the ground up. We don't have to do it the way it was built 20 years ago. And that meant, using more efficient authorship patterns like AI-driven SQL writing, AI-driven like viz building, right? One-click forecasting, like you saw on the main stage today, to really make your authors a lot more efficient, but also a lot more kind of skilled because they don't need to go and understand all the details of data science, for example, to do forecasting. And it's the same for the consumption experience, right? So traditionally, you built a dashboard, somebody had a follow-up question, they went back to the analyst, they add a new panel. But Genie allows you to have this like kind of well-rounded closing the loop within the data product itself. And finally, just more options to share with your organization. And that was the motivation for Databricks One. Right? If you have everything you've done in Databricks, but your business users aren't comfortable coming into the workspace, or you as an admin aren't comfortable bringing your business users into the workspace because they're going to write crazy queries, um, people ask for a better way to manage that. So today we're going to talk about how the work we're doing is going to address all three of these. But ultimately, the vision of AIBI is we want to shift you guys from a model where anytime somebody has a question, you built a new dashboard, to now actually curating dashboards and Genies by topic or by team. And then this becomes like a long-living asset where you can iterate on, you can improve, and you don't have this like data sprawl in your organizations anymore, where you have like just tons of deprecated dashboards and everyone's always building new stuff. Okay, so what's new? Let's talk about that plethora of dashboard capabilities first. The first one, and I'm actually curious at this point because the way we get these feature requests is that a lot of our customers talk to our account teams, and the account teams literally Slack Rory and I and go, hey, like, do you guys have calculated measures? No? Well, when's that coming? And then we start keeping a log of what are the most common asks, and that informs our roadmap. So did any of you guys ask for calculated measures and dimensions? Okay, awesome. Okay, I see hands. Okay, yeah, so we built it. Calculated dimensions are now generally available in dashboards. So real quick is within the data tab now, and you'll see this in the demo, you can create custom definitions for just aggregated metrics or entire new fields. So you can do this after you do the querying. And what this really enables is one, it's just a lot more flexible in terms of how you express data, but there's a huge performance benefit as well. Because every time you have a dashboard data set, that is something that we have to execute when you load that dashboard. So before, if you wanted an average and then like an aggregation, but you also wanted to filter by individual rows, those are separate data sets you have to do. Because once you aggregated, you lost all the detail. So with calculated dimensions, you can do that post-processed so that you get a lot fewer data sets, and that also has cross-filtering capabilities as well. So a really simple example is if you want to do profit margin, you no longer have to create a new data set and write custom SQL just to calculate that. You can just have an orders table, and you can write the formula for profit margin, and then that is aggregated and calculated for you at the end of a data set. We also did multi-page layout with filtering that applies across all of them. So did anybody ask for multi-page or wanted multi-page since GA? Sweet, okay. So multi-page is also available. The key thing to note here is that right now we have a 10-page limit on multi-page, and then 100 visualizations within each of those pages. The other thing to note is that there is a performance benefit here in multi-page as well. Because we saw an opportunity to basically help you only conditionally render what's needed for the publish view. So a common example is you have basic queries to do general high-level KPIs, but then you have an expensive query that digs into details, right? So you can put that expensive query in a details tab, have everybody land on the summary tab first. So until somebody goes into the details tab, you will never have to execute that query. So we really recommend actually breaking up your dashboards into multiple pages, because then you can conditionally control kind of how much compute you use. We also did new visualizations. So a couple of key ones like maps were not available last year this time, but now you've got point, you've got choropleth. We've introduced box plot to show you better distributions. We've introduced Sankey to show you kind of how data flows between stages. We did forecasting, and right now the team is working on funnel. So there's definitely still a long list that's being worked on. So know that new visualizations are always coming as well. That's just kind of what we had time to cover in detail, one per slide. But there's so much more coming, right? Like just to name some of the things on this list, tagging and certification are on the way. Version controlling with Git folders for you guys who want to version control and kind of manage dashboards via CI/CD is available in public preview now. You can now restore from the last published version. And one thing we're always surprised by is nobody really asks for undo redo. I don't know if that's like something people actually just don't need as much anymore. But we personally really want an undo redo. So undo redo is in development now, and that should be out in the next month or so. So you can finally like Command Z, undo some changes on the canvas. But today already, you can undo a dashboard to the last published version. So if you don't like the local changes you're making, but you want to just go back to what your viewers see, there's already an easy button for you to do that. Actually, one more note on this is that we really love for you guys to keep working with us and telling us what you still want to see from dashboards, right? Like if you're looking at incorporating dashboards into your workflows, but you're currently doing it in another tool, like you want to do it in AI BI, but you can't because you needed maps or you needed multi-page. Talk to your account teams, get connected with us, get that feedback in, and it really does inform our roadmap every single quarter. Okay, so that's the kind of the plethora of BI capabilities. But the other thing we wanted to talk about is integrating AI. So the first thing is, last year we said, you've got dashboards, you've got Genie, separate surfaces, but we want to bring them together so you can use them in one place. We did do that this year. So in this GIF here, you can see Genie is now natively embedded into dashboards. And there's two ways to do this. One is, when you publish a dashboard now, you can just say, hey, spin up a Genie based on the context of this dashboard. And we automatically do that for you, and that's what you see here. Now, obviously, if you have existing Genie spaces and you've done a ton of work, going through making sure the instructions are right, you're happy with the performance of that space, you can also connect an existing Genie space, and that will be what's used to populate this window. So, this is the starting version of this feature, and there's going to be more integrations coming. You can imagine, I'm going to ask a query, I'm going to generate a new chart and put it onto my canvas. Those flows are all things that we're investigating as well. But today already, when you look at a dashboard, you can invoke a Genie, ask follow-up questions, and it'll be able to look at things like, oh, like these are your visualizations, these are the aggregations you have on those visualizations, so these must be what you're referring to when you ask a question in this way. That's for the viewer, but we also wanted to make your authors just a lot more efficient. So there's two things that we put together to give you key drivers and forecasting. So the first thing is, similar with notebooks and SQL Editor, it's been a couple of years now where you've had the ability to use the assistant to help you write queries. You can do that in dashboards as well, right? So you can expect those benefits across the platform. But also on the Canvas side, we've given you natural language and the ability to just shortcut clicking through like this field on X, this field on Y, aggregate by week over here, color by this field. That it can all be done in English. So you can now do both of those pieces entirely with natural language to help speed up and kind of reduce the learning curve of the tool. But the really cool thing about these two is that if you have the ability to spin up new SQL, and you also have the ability to generate new visualizations based off of AI, you can do one-click visualization generation now. So if you want to forecast something, we will both give you the new SQL and also spin up the new line chart at the same time. So you have one-click generation of that insight by leveraging both of these mechanisms under the hood. And finally, we've unveiled new paths for sharing. There's two things that we heard that made sharing difficult in AI/BI last year. The first one was, my business users work in things like Google Drive today, where my entire organization exists in the search dialog, right? So like I can find my boss, I can find my skip, I can find my team. All my mailing lists are here. So if I write a doc, I can share it with anybody. But they come into Databricks and they're like, I can't find anybody here. I feel like I'm the only user on an island in Databricks because my admin hasn't provisioned the rest of the organization, so I feel stuck. So what we did there is that there's a new mechanism called automatic identity that is now available starting with Azure, where you basically connect Databricks to your Azure ADP, and then all of your users who exist in Azure and all those groups are now available to be shared to from within the dashboard share dialog. So now you can finally find everybody in your organization. And once you share with that dashboard with them, what they get is an email and an invite to view that dashboard. And if they're not already provisioned into Databricks, they'll be just-in-time provision when they come in, and there'll be a provision at the account level. And then the admin can further put them into groups, right? And do all that management. But we've kind of eliminated that barrier for sharing. The other part is like, hey, like if I can't bring my end users into Databricks because the workspace is scary, like they're going to run up costs because they don't know what these buttons do. It doesn't feel like a BI tool. Like they have viewer licenses in Tableau. They have this great Explorer experience, right? So what we did is that there's a new consumer entitlement now in the workspace. And how it works is you provision a user into Databricks. And when you add them to a workspace, instead of saying, hey, now you can use SQL, you can say, hey, you are just a consumer in this workspace. And what that practically looks like is the workspace is going to be super clean. So you get only dashboards and Genie on the left. You get your list pages for those two assets. And the only things available on that list are the things that are shared with you. So it's a much cleaner experience, and it's a first step towards Databricks 1, which is on the main stage, which is not available yet. But this consumer entitlement already is. And 1 will directly kind of piggyback off of the mechanism of this consumer role. So consumer users will get the experience of 1 when that is released. So you can already start playing with this consumer role. It's generally available. But these are kind of hairy topics. Like identity is never like quite as easy as it sounds like on stage. So there's a dedicated session this afternoon to talk about that. So I left a screenshot there for you guys to know. And yeah, like I said, that mechanism consumer piggybacks with Databricks one once available. But today you can already something you can try. And we obviously love feedback on that mechanism as well. The last part of sharing is embedding. So embedding was actually our single most hotly requested feature when we GA'd. And embedding, at first, what we heard from you guys is, I want to wrap this in an iframe or some sort of other component and put it into a custom application. And we said, okay, here's an iframe, right? Super easy. You can, from the shared dog, you grab that iframe, you put it into a Confluence, you put it into a wiki, and it works. And that worked for some users, but then as soon as we released that, we heard, wait, hold on. What it meant was, I want to put dashboards in front of my vendors and my own customers because I have this really interesting data that I really want to share and be kind of like show off like how more modern that my tool is against my competitors by putting dashboards and analytics like natively into my vendor portals. But the key thing there was those users are not in your IDP. And you don't want to provision all of those users into Databricks and suddenly give them access to, say, all of your tables, right? So what we did there is that now there's a private preview for what we're calling embedding with app delegated authentication. And real simple, it just means you can provision a service principal, you authenticate your application against Databricks using that SP, and at that point, all of your kind of end customers can impersonate that SP to load that dashboard. So they no longer need data access, and they no longer need to have Databricks accounts. But you're probably thinking, but I don't want vendor A to see data from vendor B, right? So that's obviously something that's really important. So as part of this mechanism, we also allowed you to pass key value pairs. Essentially, you can parameterize the request within your applications based on the viewer looking at that dashboard. And then you get the ability to filter the data depending on who's viewing. Now, in both of these cases, the same caching mechanisms that we have for performance is applied. And also, it's just super easy to kind of look at, all the lineage, auditing, right, is all included as well. So that's a really quick look at kind of the latest things we've been doing, but we know performance is also top of mind for a lot of you. So for that, I'm going to hand it over to Rory.
All right, I need the clicker.
Yeah.
All right, so performance best practices, I had 10 tips to start with. I had to boil it down to 4 to fit. So if you have more questions after this, send them to Eason. Not just kidding, come ask me afterwards or ask your account rep. There are 4 basic things I want to go over. We want to leverage client-side compute to avoid round trips to the server to speed things up. We prefer dashboard filters to parameters, so don't use parameters for filters. And I have slides on each of these in a second. You want to use custom calculations to prevent dataset sprawl. And you want to trim columns in your dataset to reduce network load. And let's go through each of those really quick. All right, so client-side compute. You want to keep your datasets at the moment under 100,000 rows and 100 megabytes in size. If you filter on result sets that small, everything occurs already in the browser. So of course you have to run them the first time to load them into the browser. But now when users change their filter dropdowns, 0 queries are executed, there's 0 load on the warehouse, there's 0 cost. If they're bigger than 100K rows or 100 megabytes, you get multi-second interactive latency, right? It has to go run parameter changes the code, for example, or it's too big, it must run the query on the server side. So of course that's going to be slow. If you keep it under, of course, you're going to get that sub-second latency. And kind of as a follow-up point to that, this is why this slide is here for filters to parameters. Filtering happens client-side if the data set is small. The parameters always run server-side. You can see the difference in the example here. On the left-hand side, maybe it might be your right, I don't know. Select AB table where parameter, that hits the server every time because it changes the SQL itself. So of course we have to run it on the server. If you just add a filter control to the dashboard, it happens client-side, if it's small.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing to emphasize what you just said there, because on stage when you look at AI/BI demos, there's always this like magical pick a couple drop downs and the dashboard is instantly loading, right? And I've been on calls with some customers saying like that doesn't happen for me. Like, well, why isn't it happening? Well, it is those two things. It is either your data is too big, so it's over 100,000 rows or 100 megabytes, or you're using parameters. And if you can get out of those scenarios, you get the same magical kind of like interactive feedback that you get that you see in all of the demos that we do.
And I've definitely gotten tickets that I've routed to the team where they're like, it was fast and now it's slow. And invariably they tripped over one of these limits. It's not very hard to go from inside the limit to outside the limit.
Yeah.
Super common. We are working, you didn't list it on the roadmap, I think, to increase that 100K limit rather dramatically, probably like 10x or remove it altogether. We shall see. The data limit will probably remain for now. All right, the second thing I've heard a lot of complaints about is data set sprawl. So let's suppose you wanted to create a profit margin. That's really easy. It's, revenue minus cost divided by revenue. And then you say, I need to segment it by region or state or industry. And the first thing people do is they start cloning their data set and making one for each. That's lots of data sets to build and maintain. But instead, you can create a custom calculation and now you can segment by those things. So one data set can now power many widgets, which also works well with cross-filtering. I'll show that in the demo in a few seconds. And of course, fewer data sets means fewer queries, faster download, faster dashboards. And the last one, I've seen this one a fair bit. You want to trim your columns down. Fewer bytes over the wire means faster loads. We had a ticket the other day. Someone did select star from like a table with like 5,000 columns. And of course it was super slow. And they're like, why is my dashboard unbelievably slow? It's like they're downloading an incredible amount of data. You really want to do select ABC or whatever you need from that table and just pull that. Otherwise, you're going to have performance problems. It's sad but true, right? Everything is going over the internet. All right, so this gets the fun part where we're going to go to the demo. And hopefully I can drive successfully from my laptop here, and hopefully it's still connected to the network. It is. All right. So I've got a multi-page dashboard. So one of the things he talked about, one of the things that we launched this year was multi-page. So we have a summary and then detail pages. So sales overview, we've got a region breakdown, we've got account details. One of the things we just launched, if I go back to the summary tab here, is we now have global filters. So you can click the little filter icon on the left there. It opens up this panel. I can do nice things like select the last 90 days. And I can pick the industry. I'll pick tech because most of us here are in tech. All right. And so now you've got this dashboard and you can see if we like jump to say the region breakdown, those carried over. Why did that? That's odd.
Maybe there's no data for those. Yep.
Yeah, there was no data for that filter, but you can see there was a map there. If we clear out the tech, you can see there's a lot more data, right? The other thing I want to call your attention to while I'm on this slide is we've built a Sankey diagram. So that's nice. You can see I've got a filter set to the Midwest. I should be able to clear that somewhere. I wonder where that's coming from. Right? And so now in your Sankey diagram, you've got your Midwest, tech, all of these things are over here. I'm in edit mode, so that may be a little bit of our pain here. And you can even like narrow things down further with segmentation, which is kind of nice. There was a cross filter set. All right, so you can see all of these things here. So now you've got Sankey diagrams, we've got a nice box plot showing min and max for each region, quartiles, all of those good things. All right, jumping back here a little bit. The second thing, I think he just talked about forecasting, which is quite nice. We have sales revenue over here. You're looking at that, trying to wonder what the future is. And are we just struggling here? All right, so we've got this nice thing. You should be able to hit this forecast button. I'm doing this live, so we'll see what happens. That went well. Oh, it's thinking. So that should be running. And now you're getting this nice forecast. The dotted line is the forecasted region. The shaded bars are your error bars. I'm going to publish this dashboard here, which is, if you've used it, there's a kind of a draft and published mode. So authors are seeing the draft version. Publish is taking a snapshot ready for your viewers. And you end up with the same dashboard over here for your viewers, right? And you can see all of these things, right? And so we'll jump in here. And one of the new features that we also have, we talked about using AI a second ago. And of course, I jumped off to the wrong thing. Sorry. Mouse errors. You can now hit explain this increase, and it should run, why did February have a slight bump? And it will ask Genie why it had a bump. And so it's running live. Let's see what it says. This is running over my cell phone, so we'll see how that goes. All right, it actually came back in a timely manner, not too bad. All right, so you can see it says, hey, look, for the time period, it went up 600K due to enterprise purchases, but that was slightly reduced by a decrease in performance and standard. And you can see it gives you a nice little bar chart here showing what went up. Enterprise is at the top, standard is at the bottom, and it gives you more charts to kind of help you out. All right, more fun. If you haven't done this, and we have a schedule. So let me add a little filter here. Let me just add this one, filter. All right, you can now hit schedule and we can create new schedules. Schedule. And new feature here, we've got use default values, use filter selections. So this is nice because we've gotten a lot of this request. Who here has had this request where they're like, I want to send this dashboard to 3 different people and they need 3 different regions or 3 different somethings. Is that common? Maybe not. All right, nobody. So now I can create that schedule. And if I hover over the filter icon, you can see it says changing dates there at the bottom, 90 days. So everybody, you can now subscribe different people to different variants of this without having to duplicate the dashboard and set different default values. All right, the last thing I wanted to show here was embedding. So if you hit the share button, this is our most popular request, and I'm going to show how easy it is. In like less than a minute, you can embed this dashboard in Confluence, and I'm going to do this live too. So where'd my mouse go?
Bottom left corner.
Yeah,
I see it on the bigger screen.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. All right, so if I hit embed dashboard, you see JavaScript. We're not doing code. We're going to do iframe. Let's just take all of this. It'll be easier. All right, that'll be good enough. I'll trim it in a second. Screw it. Okay, so there we go. And let's go over to our Confluence page. And I have a Confluence page prepared here. Lovely. I think I got disconnected from the network, so I'm going to reload it. Pardon me. You can search for an iframe. And we can just simply paste the URL in here. I had some garbage at the end. And I overdid that. Okay. All the way to the beginning here.
Confluence doesn't want the full iframe. They just want the URL.
Yeah, I copied a little too much. And it included all the parameters. So let's do that. All right. And I have still a little too. Hopefully that got everything. And we'll set the width to 100% and the height to 1,000 pixels. And hopefully you should see live, it's populating and loading. Your dashboard is now in this Confluence page. Hit update. You can see we really do have a live Confluence page with multi-page, with global filters. All of your data is right here. So if you really wanted to give this to your users in Confluence, that took like a minute here on stage with me fumbling about. So that is the last bit of things that I wanted to demo. What you wanted to talk about next?
I was going to do roadmap, so
okay.
Yep.
I will scroll you back over.
Sounds good.
Somewhere.
Great.
I think right here.
Thank you. All right, so you saw the demo, and I just want to recap that we are seeing a lot of traction in AIBI, especially from last year to this year. Rivian is one of the customers that you saw. At the end of keynote, they're really able to now enable technical and business users at the same time to get insights from their data. So we'd love for everybody to get there, with Rivian, with wine shipping, these customers, and leverage AIBI, in your organization. So we really believe in the mission that we do, and we want to work with all of you to understand, what else are you trying to see from the product? What would it take for you guys to get there in your organizations, and realize all of these unification benefits? So what we're currently thinking, and what we heard from you guys, and I see it's like phones already up, ready to take a picture of the roadmap, is a couple of things, right? So first one is we heard asks around kind of a native TV monitor display mode. So today, there isn't really an easy way to just refresh a dashboard on its own. So it's not really good for kind of a personal display, trading desk, room setting. So we want to give you that. Drilling down and drilling through, so like that will only keep getting better, and you will get more capabilities, level of detail, hierarchies, kind of next level of interactivity and expressibility will come. What you just saw there is sort of an initial version of report bursting that Rory showed, where you can manually go through, pick up some values, and then send that to an audience. High volume means you will be able to upload a table where every single row is going to be a different recipient, and then you can say like, hey, team A needs values A, B, and C to be set for these fields. Team B needs this, and you can have 30, 40 teams, right? And then so you'll be able to just iterate through that list and burst dashboards to much, much larger audiences. And when you update those tables, you will also be able to update the schedule, so there's just so much less maintenance to do there. Funnel visualization, you can already see a mock-up of what that will look like. That's in the final stages of development. We're looking at alerts integration. So a common thing we hear is, hey, like if my line goes above the certain threshold, I want to send this copy to someone who should know about it, right? You can already do that today with how we've integrated with workflows. So today you can already, as part of this kind of new release, is the ability to send a dashboard burst as part of a workflow task. And workflows also have kind of if conditions. So you could theoretically already say like run a query if the number is above this, versus dashboard as a follow-up task. It kind of gives you the full power of workflows if you want to do that. But we want to give you something native as well, because we know not every user is kind of comfortable configuring workflows. They might feel more comfortable working in dashboards. On the performance side, we're looking at optimized query as a native button. A performance profiler that you might already be familiar with, a SQL editor, will come to dashboards, and some native performance improvements, right? So we know 100K works for most use cases, but there are genuinely cases where you do have more than 100,000 rows where you still want the past performance. So we're looking at ways, like under the hood, to implement how we're doing our caching to give you a higher limit, without like crashing everybody's web browser. So a lot more coming on that front. I would love feedback on these if this feels like the right direction we're going in. If there are things you guys want to see that isn't on this list, obviously like undo redos, small things like usability improvements are kind of too small to be listed on slides like these. But just know that our entire front end team is kind of working on that as well. So thank you so much. Thank you for all the partnership, all the feedback, and we'd love to take questions.